ReliaQuest mental performance coaches Dr. Nicole, Detling, and Derin McMains interview top performers across multiple industries to unpack the strategies and the mindset they use to get the job done. Welcome to No Show Dogs, powered by ReliaQuest. Hey, welcome back to the No Show Dogs podcast, powered by ReliaQuest. My name is Derin McMains, and today I'm joined alongside our mental performance coach, Dr. Nicole Detling. And today our guest is Pepperdine University's Director of Tennis and Men's Head Coach, Adam Schaechterle. Adam began his career in scouting and player management for Wilson Sporting Goods, eventually overseeing North and South America for all junior, college, and professional tennis players. And then he became a Division I head coach at 27 years old at the University of North Florida. From there, he took an assistant role for 5 years at the University of Notre Dame before becoming the head coach at Pepperdine in 2018. Now, after a short rebuild, Pepperdine has won conference titles in 3 of the last 5 years and reached the top 25 in 5 of the last 6 years. And he's also produced 5 All-Americans. Doc, we've had 2 days now to reflect on this conversation. What was your main takeaway and just something everyone should listen for?
Yeah, so there are a few takeaways in this one. I think people are really going to enjoy it. But what really stuck out to me were his self-awareness, his willingness to be vulnerable, and how open he is to learning. So check this out. He was a head coach of a Division I program, right? NCAA, head coach of D1, like that's it. That's the elite. You get to a head coach of a Division I program. And he made the decision to step down as head coach to become an assistant coach somewhere else. Now, for a lot of people, that's taking a step back. What I see it as is he was willing to put his ego aside and to recognize that long-term mastery was more important than a short-term title. He was open to learn. He recognized there was more that he could do if he was willing to, what other people might see as take a step back. That's pretty cool. And then the other thing I want to point out is he talks a lot about the disappointments and failures that he experienced along the way and how he has worked through those. All of us, we all experience rejection. And it's one of the hardest things personally to manage when you get rejected in any way in life, whether it's professionally, personally, whatever it is. And so we dug into this a little bit with him and asked how he manages that, how he got through that rejection. And I really want to encourage our listeners to listen for his answer, because I think regardless of where you get rejected in life or where you're struggling, you'll be able to apply some of the principles and lessons that he has used to work through his own rejection.
Yeah, really good, really good. I tell you, my number one takeaway was when he said specifically, obsession is hard to beat. I love that. I love that. Obsession is hard to beat. And what Adam was specifically talking about was his obsession with development. This guy is obsessed with better, not winning. Sure, he loves to win, obviously, but he's obsessed with improvement, growing, and doing his absolute best to squeeze the most potential out of the student athletes that he gets to coach. And Doc, you know this, like you give us a coach that cares about the individual they're coaching on a personal level. They're passionate about their sport and they're obsessed with development, and we'll show you a world-class coach, right? And that's what Adam is, and that's why he's been successful, and that's why he'll continue to elevate Pepperdine's tennis program. And I would say the one thing to listen for is his answer to the question that you asked, Doc, toward the end of our interview about what he does to intentionally develop himself. And he begins to talk about how a music book has been far more impactful to the way he develops talent than any coaching or sport-focused book that he's ever read. Let's jump into this interview. All right, Shaq, welcome to No Show Dogs, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, let's jump into this, right? Let's talk about that first big decision you had to make. So 27 years old, first time Division I head coach at the University of North Florida. And then you make a decision to maybe what seems like to some people, maybe going backwards. I don't know. Just talk us through what that felt like when you left the University of North Florida as a Division I head coach and you became an assistant coach at the University of Notre Dame. What all went into that?
Yeah, it's some amazing memories from that time. And that was not the initial intention going into the summer. What happened, and this is something that a lot of coaches in Division I athletics trying to balance family and the job. My wife got pregnant with our first child. and she was making more than me when I was the head coach at North Florida. So probably halfway through the pregnancy, we started talking about her hopes and dreams along with mine. And she really had a strong desire to be a stay-at-home mom. And so I went to the athletic director at North Florida and I said, hey, program's going the right direction. We had finished top 50 that year. We had a top 15 recruiting class for Division I coming in, and we had beaten University of Miami, some fun results that year. And he was like, hey, love what you're doing with the program, love everything about you, love the culture, but this is a stepping stone mid-major job, and we just don't have the resources to do anything to support you beyond where you're at right now. And so I came home. Now my wife's 7 months pregnant, and we had an amazing convo. And she's been a really trusted confidant, throughout my career. And what started as, okay, how are we going to make this work? And looking back, we were talking like, how do we make an extra $5,000? I think with 5 to 10,000, like we can make this work. And then it evolved into me opening up a little bit with her and saying, hey, I feel like I have some holes in my capacities as a head coach. I don't feel like I'm currently a top 10 collegiate head coach. And that's what I want to be. I want to be elite in what I'm doing. And she doesn't know that much about athletics or about college athletics, but she was like, well, what do you need to do to become a top 10 coach? And I remember being like, I don't know. I think that probably looks like being mentored further. I came when I was 27. And so she went to take a nap being 7 months pregnant. And I emailed 3 coaches, Florida and oddly enough, Pepperdine and Notre Dame. And when she woke up from her nap, I was like, hey, I have a flight tomorrow to interview at Notre Dame. And
How long was you napping? I'm just kidding.
yeah, she was like, wait a second, I thought we were just talking here. All of a sudden it became very real. And that was a good test, not only for my career, but also for how our marriage and just our bond and how we navigated those kind of challenges of what do we want to be as a family? What do I want to be as a coach? What is the direction that we're headed? And Notre Dame just really felt like the right next step. I felt the specific holes. We had coached a top 10 doubles team in the Division I rankings at North Florida. We had won a conference regular season title. I had done a really good job of recruiting some misfits, maybe some guys that were, overlooked in the recruiting process. And we talked about, I need to be able to beat the elite blue blood college programs head to head in recruiting battles. I need to be not only good at coaching doubles, but I need to be an elite developer of singles players. And I need to know how to develop a championship culture. And I felt like those were some specific holes that I just needed additional mentorship. And that was behind that initial move to Notre Dame.
Wow, man. Like, that's incredible. Self-awareness, 1, vulnerability, 2. And I love how your focus was on mastery, becoming the best coach you could possibly become, not specifically on roles, right? So that it would not feel like, of course, like a step back to you, right? Which some people that are all focused on outcomes or roles, they would say, oh, well, if it's not I think about the corporate world. If I don't go from manager to senior manager to director, whatever, then I must be going backwards. But I think the wisdom here is like, hey, how can you be focused on development? How can I get a little better? How can I be just straight focused on getting better and knowing that that'll ultimately lead to the outcome that you want? So take us to Notre Dame, man. So you get there. What was the challenge early on? I would imagine going from a head coach, making all the decisions, to now moving into an assistant coach role. How was that for you from a mindset perspective? And then how did you find your footing? Kind of take us through that journey there.
Yeah, I think so. Ryan Satchery, the head coach, I give him a lot of credit. The way that he built his staff, he was a first-time head coach. So he's taking over the University of Notre Dame after being an assistant coach for 8 or 9 years, very successful run as an assistant. But he hired myself and then another coach, Chris James, who had been a Division I head coach for 6 years. So he's got 2 assistant coaches on his staff who have quite a bit of head coaching experience, Chris more than myself. And he made it really clear from day one, I want this to be a collaborative process, and I would love if we have disagreements. We're gonna go hard in the office with the three of us, and we're gonna not be on the same page, and then we're gonna walk out of the office and we're gonna be aligned, and we're gonna make Notre Dame tennis better. That learning experience of watching his humility and recognizing some areas where he gave me ownership, he really turned over the leadership of the recruiting and the development process. And I would say that's something that he was a phenomenal developer, and yet he made space for me to have control and autonomy and feel a sense of ownership. And so I think it was just great leadership from his part to make that space. And then it was great learning to have those conversations and to have the freedom to disagree and the freedom to walk away and say, well, I really wanted to do this. Let's see how it works out to go the other direction. Um, and I think the other piece at Notre Dame that I really valued, they strongly encouraged coaches from different sports to attend practices of other sports. And I was just stunned. I went and watched Jim McLaughlin and Mike Johnson run their practices with women's volleyball, a sport I don't know anything about. And I was just amazed at the organization and the intention and the specific way of communication. And it affected my coaching deeply. Bobby Clark, he won a national title in men's soccer. I learned a lot from him as well. But I think the women's volleyball coaches probably left the strongest impression on how I communicate and how I coach. And so between Notre Dame and then also Coach Schaechterle, I think they did a really excellent job of giving an assistant coach room to grow and develop a sense of who you are as a coach and as a person.
When did you know you were ready to go take over another program again? Like, was there a moment, like, as you're learning from other sports, you're getting all this great insight, and when did you feel like, all right, I'm ready now, like I'm ready to go?
Yeah, so I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina right now for a wedding, and it brought back some memories. My assistant coach Kazuki Matsuno is getting married today, and so fired up to be there for him. But I thought I was ready and prepared when the NC State job came open, and so that was after 3 years at Notre Dame. After 2 years at Notre Dame, I interviewed at Wisconsin, and that was my dream job growing up in Milwaukee. Go Brewers! And the way that it's worked out is that Notre Dame prepared me for Pepperdine, and I do believe that Pepperdine is a unique fit for me. We can get into some of the specifics and how that plays out, but the resources at Pepperdine, the location, the style of coaching that I do, I felt ready and was incredibly disappointed when it didn't work out at some of those other stops and getting rejected. I think I interviewed 8 or 9 times for head coaching jobs before I got Pepperdine. Um, but it led to a great fit and a unique fit at Pepperdine.
That's really cool. I'd love for you to go into a little bit of how you handled the disappointment of being rejected over and over and over again, because I think a lot of coaches, a lot of athletes, but a lot of business leaders as well, who think they're ready for a leadership position or some kind of promotion or a new job, and they just keep getting rejected. How did you handle that and continue to push yourself to grow and learn and improve so that you were ready when the time was right for you?
So I would love here to say how mature I was, and that I had a broad perspective. There were moments I remember after the NC State one in particular. We really felt like it was the right time, the right place. That I nailed the interview, and I was crushed. And we talked about my wife and I about getting out of college coaching. Maybe this is just a career where you need connections. I wasn't a superstar player myself. I didn't have a pro career, and maybe that's something that athletic directors want. I kind of question the fairness of how this process works, and where we boiled down to was that this is my passion. I'm obsessed with the development process. I love the age, the college age, because I feel like that's a unique fit for the way I coach and the way I interact with young people. My fourth and fifth years at Notre Dame, I felt a real sense of freedom and letting go of, I've got to hit this ranking to make myself look good. I've got to win this match in order to boost my resume. And I think it made me a better coach. I remember my fifth year, we actually had a rebuilding year and a young team. And I just had the most fun that I've ever had coaching, and just made unbelievable connection with these young guys. And we ended up performing much better. I think it took away some of my anxiety and some of my attachment to the results of the matches. And part of that was the repeated failure of earning a head coach position, and then boiling down to, I love this job. I love what it allows me to do. I'm just going to coach and really pour myself into that. And so I don't know that that was coming from a place of maturity as much. It was just kind of got beaten out of me. I got enough no's and enough losses where that really finally I wisened up to that perspective.
You know what, Shaq? That reminds me of a story. It's kind of similar. I know you're a baseball guy. Hunter Pence, for those that are listening that might know, Hunter, Hunter recently retired a couple years ago, but had a great career. But I remember him sharing a story with me around that same idea of what you just talked about, like how you let go of rankings, let go of that. And that was the best coaching you'd done. You actually enjoyed where you were at. And the story that he shared with me, this was years ago, but when he was in Lexington, Kentucky, he was in low A in the South Atlantic League. He was drafted by the Astros, and he's in that league. And as a high pick, all he's thinking about is, how can I get out of this level? Like, how can I get out of this level to get to the next level, to get to high A and to double A and to triple A, whatever it may be. And he wasn't playing very well. And he had this realization, this insight. It wasn't somebody that told him, but one day he just kind of decided, well, what if I just loved the league I was in? Like, what if I just loved where I was at, stopped worrying about getting to the next level and just learned to love this level? Let's see what that would do. And he said his entire perspective, his entire performance, everything changed at that moment, because he learned to love being in Lexington, and he learned to love the bus rides, and he learned to love his teammates. And he wasn't thinking about the next thing. He was just thinking about this thing, the thing where he was at. And the cool thing he said that he didn't realize was that when he got to the big leagues, that mindset was the same. There was no shift. It was, hey, I just love this league because this is the ultimate league, right? The major leagues. And so, a lot of guys are always thinking about, how can I get to next, get to next, get to next? Then they get to the big leagues and it's like, oh, there is no next. Now what do we do? And then they try to just hold on, which we know it's easier to climb than to hold on, right? But anyway, it's just a cool kind of story that just parallels yours, where it's like, hey, when you let go of trying to get to that next level and just be great and love where you're at, it's amazing how much freedom you experience and how much better you perform.
Yeah, I think it can be, when you're doing a lot of interviewing, there can be a pressure to, maybe a little bit like social media, and the pressure of living your life for Instagram, and kind of thinking as you're going out, instead of being in the moment and really enjoying it, you're like, what's going to be the right photo or video here that I'm going to show everyone how great of a time I'm having? I think you can experience that same feeling as a coach or as an athlete, where you're, okay, I'm in this moment, but it's really so that I can tell a story, so that I can interview well, and I'll nail that next one-on-one. And there was enough failure where I think I got to the point I was like, I don't really care. I love what I do. I'm going to do a great job at Notre Dame. And if I only have a year or two left in college coaching, and then I go, sell insurance after that, well, I'm going to really love every second of what I'm doing now. And I think that sense of freedom really helped me be a better coach.
It's awesome, man. And now let's move to Pepperdine. So you get the job, right? And you've been crushing it, man, right? Won conference titles 3 of the last 5 years. You guys have reached the top 25, and 5 of the last 6 years. You produced 5 All-Americans. Let's just talk about first your approach to winning there. Like, lessons learned from North Florida, lessons learned at University of Notre Dame, and now you're at Pepperdine, which is a lot different than Notre Dame, right? But I'm sure there's some similarities too. So what is your approach, man, to doing what you've done there with that program?
When I inherited the program at Pepperdine, we had 3 guys, and 2 of the 3 were more the level of a Division III player than a Division I player. And so the initial plan at Pepperdine was just to try to put a team together. I got the job in June, July, and the season began in August.
Oh, wow. So
And we needed,
to give people
yeah.
context, so yeah, season starts in August. You get the job June, July-ish, and 3 players are on your team. How many do you need to have a full team?
Well, I remember I called one of the 3 players, and 6 players start in singles and doubles. And I called this Brazilian guy and said, "Hey, talk to me about your goals for the season." And he's like, "Coach, I really hope I can contribute in the doubles lineup." And I said, "Well, 6 guys play, and you're the 3rd guy on the team. So right now, we need you to have a bigger role than just doubles." And some amazing times. Another moment was that August. I asked our assistant coach to run a drill, and the drill was a forehand domination, which ended with a volley. And I told him I want 80% of the points to end at the net. The whole goal is climbing the court and finishing in the front court with a volley. And they went 15 minutes without hitting a volley. And I pulled him aside, and I'm feeding my court and running the court next door, and I come over. I'm like, "Tass, what are you doing? You're supposed to be working on transitioning and getting to the net." And he's like, gets like big eyes. He's like, "Adam, they just keep missing.
Oh, wow.
I don't know what to do. They can't get there." And so I think it was eye opening just where the level was, and then I learned an awful lot about getting a group around me to buy in. I think Pepperdine's initial expectations for the team was maybe in 5 years or so we would become relevant to maybe make an NCAA tournament again. And we were in really hyper growth mode in that initial 6 to 12 months. And so we ended up about 10 months in, we signed the number 1 player in the world as a recruit, and the team was still horrendous at the time. We were at Santa Barbara playing a match, and I had started recruiting this Polish kid the day that I got the job. He blocked me after 6 months on social media and WhatsApp because I sent too many messages. And we're sitting in the hotel room getting ready to play Santa Barbara on a Friday. It was Thursday night, and my assistant out of nowhere just sits up in the bed, and he's like, "I just got a message back from this Polish kid, Kasper Zook." And I had sent six months of messages with no response. And I say, "Hey, tell him you're gonna be in Poland. You just happen to be in Warsaw on Saturday." And he's looking at me like, "What are you talking about?" I said, just tell him that you just happen to be going through Warsaw on Saturday." So he says it, and the kid says, "Hey, let's grab a coffee. I'd love to meet." We play Santa Barbara Friday. He didn't have time to change or shower. He drove to the airport with the 15-seater van that we took the team to Santa Barbara with, took the red eye. We end up signing the kid, and the kid is fully committed to come to Pepperdine, and he would have been not only the number 1 recruit in the country, but as a freshman, he would have been top 5 in all of college tennis. And coming from where we're at, where we're 190 in college tennis as a team, to having the number 1 player, and we beat Texas, who had just won the national championship, for Kasper to sign him. And at the last second, unexpectedly, our international admissions department denied him academically. And I remember, this is 9 months into the job. I was like ready to jump into the Pacific Ocean and call it right there.
Sure.
And so that first year, as much as it was about building the team, it was also very eye-opening for me in terms of we've got a lot of work to get Pepperdine aligned with what we're trying to do and some of the challenges. My athletic director was fully behind me. He was extremely passionate about the team competing for national championships and fully believed that we could do it. But there were some other areas on campus where we just needed to help people understand where we were going and how we wanted to get there, and that we were going to do a great job academically. We're going to do a great job in the community. And I think coming in as a young head coach, even after the experience I had at Notre Dame, after the experience I had in North Florida, I really took that moment as, okay, like they don't care about tennis. They don't care about me. I'm gonna pull the plug. I'm out. And it was the women's head coach at the time, Per Nielsen, has been a great mentor. I remember him telling me like, hey, no recruit is worth breaking relationship with your athletic director or with the leadership at Pepperdine. There's not one recruit that is worth that. And so when I look back at that first year and you're asking about kind of the experience in building and what we're doing it, I think it was a lot about the urgency to build and the urgency to go, but then also me maturing and understanding the bigger picture and hey, I'd like to be here for a long time and do something special. And so I can't burn bridges and just cut off relationships out of frustration, even as devastating as it was to lose a recruit like that.
And then he came in, and then he dominated, and that's what I was waiting for. And then you're like, and last minute, I was like, oh, that's a gut.
I'm totally waiting for the national championship story at the end of that. Yeah. But again, another disappointment that gave you an opportunity to reconnect with your why, reconnect with those relationships, to learn something from, which is an incredible opportunity to learn those things.
Yeah, I think that's probably been more of my story. It hasn't just been immediate success. It hasn't just been championships and nothing else. It's been, my second year at Pepperdine, we finished the season undefeated and COVID cut it off. And so we had started the year, my first year grew as the season went on, and we finished about 75 or 80 in the country. And then that second year we went 11-0, and the team had tremendous success from where we had been. And then in March, it was like, boom, that's the end. That's the end of the season. That's the end of the road. And up till that point, I had a lot of people pulling me aside, at recruiting events or, at a coaching convention and saying like, hey, what an incredible 2-year process. And my perspective was more, we've actually had some tremendous gut punches, losing the top recruit in January of my second season, right before the season started. My wife broke both of her legs skiing. And so my memory of that second season was like, I remembered 2 of the 11 matches that we played, and I basically felt like it was survival and a lot of growth and a lot of learning. And I think that's what I appreciate most about the coaching experience that I've had is it's challenged a lot of my own personal weaknesses. And I feel like my own limitations as a person or as a coach, there's nowhere to hide. You in the competition fire that we train in and that we compete in, they're gonna get exposed, and then it's caused me to have to be honest about areas where I need to improve. And so, a lot of learning, a lot of growth, a lot of pain in the first few years, and now I'm real appreciative of how that's helped our family grow, helped me grow as a person, and just where we're at now.
No Show Dogs is brought to you by ReliaQuest, the global leader in AI cybersecurity. ReliaQuest helps enterprise cybersecurity teams contain threats in minutes with its agentic AI security operations platform, Gray Matter. ReliaQuest makes security possible for the most trusted enterprise brands in the world. Learn more at ReliaQuest.com.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's such a powerful message because so many people just see the success and they assumed, oh, wow, you got lucky or somebody handed you something and it was this overnight success. And very few people, it's like the Instagram effect, right? You can wipe off the tears and show this really happy face and then go back to crying, and people don't see that. And so I appreciate you sharing the struggle. And it sounds like you're kind of indicating that the struggle is really what has led you and helped you get to where you are now. And I think a lot of people try to look past that or pretend it didn't exist and they just focus on the success. But if it wasn't for the struggle, you may not have found the success that you've had.
Yeah, and I think it's also really deepened my relationship with Pepperdine, because my athletic director at the time who hired me, I remember going into his office halfway through that second season and saying to him, hey, we're kind of out of family that can watch the kids. My wife, she's at home. She can't walk. Her mom's trying to help her. And my boys at the time were 6 and 4 years old. I'm like, they've got to come with the team. And it meant so much to me how he reacted. He didn't just say, yes, I support that, or yes, it's okay. I remember him saying, hey, this is the very best thing that your guys could see, you actively being a husband and a dad. Take them, and they came with me to play at the University of Minnesota all the way across the country, and they're traveling on the bus with the guys, and eating meals with the team and hitting on the courts as we're warming up. And so I felt that that was a unique response from Pepperdine, and that the bond that that's created, I feel like they understand my vision and the culture that I'm trying to produce, but I also feel extremely connected to the way Pepperdine approaches athletics and the way that they treat their staff. And so I think that's deepened the experience that I've had, where I don't feel like I'm just trying to produce something for an organization that doesn't really care about me. They, in action, showed that they really did care about my family.
You just mentioned, Check, about the culture you're trying to build, the culture you're trying to produce there at Pepperdine. Let's talk a little bit about that, because obviously you guys have had a ton of success. And when I think about college tennis, it's unique in the fact that it's an individual sport, while at the same time you guys compete as a team, right? Which is, it's kind of interesting. And for those people that don't watch college tennis regularly, or know how it works, there's three doubles matches that start with, and the team that wins two of those three gets a point, and then following that there's six individual singles matches, and then whichever team gets to a total of 4 points, right? You get a point for each win. So ultimately, you're trying to win, whether it's the doubles point or four of the singles matches. That's going to win you the team point or the team match, right? So anyway, with that being said, it's individual in that you're by yourself out on the court, but the team is what's going to score all the points. And so, but how do you think about developing your culture when it does have that kind of duality to it, where it's very individual focused, while at the same time, like, you're a part of something bigger than yourself? How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's such a fun challenge, and that's what I love about college tennis. I've had some opportunities to do pro coaching or federation coaching, but I keep getting pulled back to the chance to be a part of a team and something bigger than yourself, which really appeals to me. I think at Pepperdine, what I really enjoyed is that it's unique and distinctive to other top 25 programs. I think if you look at a lot of schools in the Power Four, and if you go and you visit Texas and then Florida and then Ohio State and then USC, you'll see a lot of similarities in how the weight room's set up, how the facilities are set up, how they build out a support staff. And so they've got excellent staff in every area and tremendous resources. And then you get out to Pepperdine and it's 3,000 students, and it's a real unique location in Malibu, right up on a cliff overlooking the water, and it has a distinctive feel. You're not going to have 100,000 at a football game. You're not going to have Cameron, Duke basketball game. It feels a little bit more like a professional development academy. I use the comparison when you're choosing to stay at a hotel. There's the Marriotts of the world and the Hiltons of the world, and then you have small boutique hotels. And I'm not trying to say that we're a little motel Red Roof Inn. It's an elite high-end boutique experience, and that has guided how we've built out the program and how we approach development. And so when you asked about how are we trying to win, how are we trying to compete, we start backwards. And so instead of aiming at, let's win a national championship, let's be the number one team in the country, it starts with, okay, how do we take Edward Winter, who's currently 65 in the world, coming into college as a junior, 18 and under? He's got to pass a lot of 18 and unders to be top 10 in the world and to play at the Grand Slam level. And so for him to play Wimbledon, for him to play the US Open, for him to be a consistent top 100 pro athlete, what do we need to do to produce elite development, and for him to pass other players that are either playing pro or experience other college tennis programs? And then that guides how we've built out the program. And every year we've tried to improve it. It started with just an obsession from a coaching standpoint. We'll do individuals with you every single day outside of team practice, and selling ourselves and our passion and our vision for the individual player. But now that we're 6-7 years in, it's developed out where we have the physio from the LA Rams. We have Tommy Paul's strength and conditioning coach. We've got Derin McMains, mental coach for the Diamondbacks, and podcast extraordinaire who's supporting our mental coaching. And so I think we really tried to pull back and say, okay, if money was unlimited and we could get the very best people in the world purely focused on development, not as much focused on winning the narrative or winning the storytelling battle, but what would make an 18-year-old develop optimally over that 4-year experience. And I feel like there's been quite a few stories where we've been able to show individual development and real progression of players coming in at one point and then leaving at a much higher level. That's now been compelling. And our recruiting has changed in the last couple of years. We were starting at a much lower level initially, other than the odd, signing this Casper Zug. It was mostly guys that were hungry and believed in our vision. And, last year we had the number 2 class in college tennis without a single dollar of NIL. And so really there's been the development story has resonated with kids that really want to improve and really want to play pro tennis. And so it's something I'm excited about. I think our program's getting better, and excited to see these guys. This summer, it was very fulfilling to go watch the first guy play at the French Open and see that Grand Slam experience and sit there with his dad. We talked when he was 17 years old about, this is where we're aiming to be. I want to be in the box at the French Open with you, watching your son. And then to be there and see that, and to know that there's 5-6 more waves that are headed that way. I think that's extremely fulfilling for me as a coach.
You're doing it in a way that obviously is tough to replicate, just because of your obsession, your commitment to the individual and their development, right? Which means it's a high level of care. I think some people just look and they just go, oh, we're just going to try to copy what that person's doing. But like there's something inside of you that comes out, obviously, that you're able to recruit at such a high level when you guys didn't even have a full team, right? Thinking back to when you guys first started rebuilding this thing. And just to highlight a few things, the importance of starting with the end in mind. And I love how you guys stayed focused on, like, what can we do to develop this individual player to help them become the best version of themselves? It wasn't about a story or a narrative or how can we make this look great? It's like, no, what looks great is us. We're just going to fully commit to doing whatever we can to help this individual get a little better. And that's the magic. And the funny thing is it's really not magic. Like when you just say it out loud, it's like, yeah, that makes the most sense. So now that you guys are more established and I don't know if I'd call it easier, right? You might be more difficult now because maybe teams around the country are aware of you, right? I'm sure you guys have more of a target on your back. So maybe people are trying to create negative narratives around, like, oh, this is why you shouldn't go to Pepperdine, right? Versus they probably didn't even think about you before, but now I'm sure there's some sort of awareness. Do you run into that out on the recruiting trail? On like, well, I heard this about you. I heard this about you. Now that you guys are more an established program.
The most successful coaches that I've run into, you use the word obsession, and obsession is hard to beat. If someone sacrifices and works really hard, I feel like there's usually a time limit on that, to where someone is able to make those sacrifices, and then eventually they're probably going to lean into what they're more passionate about and have a hard time staying with those sacrifices. But if you're truly obsessed, then it keeps you committed to that long-term goal. And I think the flip side of that, what I've maybe struggled with, it's been less about negative recruiting or anything like that. It's been more, over the summer, I was looking back at some of our previous years and reaching out to some of our guys and just connecting with them and seeing where they were at. And I looked at a 1-month stretch a couple seasons ago, and we beat Arizona State, and then USC and UCLA back to back. And I was like, man, the only thing that I remember from that month is we lost at Oregon. And I did a terrible job coaching that day and made some decisions that I felt like limited our chances to win, and was focused on the wrong things. And so, yeah, I think that has been more of my personal challenge. Less has been about like a target on our team's back. It's been more about that same feeling that I had as a coach at Notre Dame of, I'm gonna let go of this other stuff and just purely enjoy. I've got Lasse Portner, our German freshman, coming in this morning at 8 a.m. for an individual. I'm gonna spend an hour getting him better. And I love that I get to do that, and I'm passionate about that, and I'm excited about that. And I think my personality and just my conviction of wanting to achieve success for Pepperdine and wanting to serve these guys, that obsession, the other side of that it's real easy for me to be like, okay, we've been top 25 for 5 of the last 6 years, but we're not top 10 yet. Like we got to get there. And I think that's a constant. That's not something that I feel like I have passed over and achieved. It's something that I feel like I keep returning to in order to be the best coach that I can be, and be present in that developmental process, is to just keep reminding myself that that is not the main goal and that's not the main focus point. And so, yeah, that's more what I would say is our current battle at Pepperdine, and me as a leader. The fight that I'm fighting is to, okay, coming up now in August, we've got an unbelievable team returning, finished top 25, made second round of the NCAAs, and we have goals to be top 10 and to make the Elite Eight. That's the next step in our progression. But that boils down to getting hyper obsessed about great days in the fall, and those moments where I'm one-on-one with the guys, and what are the right triggers to help them unlock their highest potential.
Yeah, this is awesome. I love this. You're kind of alluding to it already, but what I'm curious about is, we've talked a lot about how you're doing everything you can to make sure your athletes have the best resources, the best environment to achieve their goals of going pro, which is kind of your goal for them also. I'm curious, though, what you do to intentionally develop yourself as a coach, because you need to also continue to develop and to do those things you're asking your players to do, which is continue to get better and grow and learn. And so as the leader of the team, as the leader of all these guys, what are you doing to intentionally develop?
The intentional ways, one, I really do enjoy reading and studying. I've gone away from coaching books because I feel like the coaching and business books sometimes have not made as lasting of an impact on me. The book that has made the biggest impact is actually a music teacher that developed the Suzuki School of Music. So I don't know if you remember, like Guitar 1, Guitar 2, Piano 1, Piano 2 is a Suzuki method of teaching. And his concept, which has stayed with me throughout my career, and I've read the book multiple times and gone back to it, is that every child is capable of learning. And your job as the coach or the teacher is connecting with their way of learning. And the example that he gives is how children learn to speak. And, in any culture, over a period of time, when kids become 4, 5, 6 years old, they're able to communicate, they're able to speak. And how are they learning that? They're learning it from parents talking to them. They're learning from friends talking to them. They're learning from, phonetics. And each child is able to learn in their own specific way. And I think when you're my personality, extremely competitive and obsessed with growth and development, and when you don't see the tangible results quickly, there can be frustration in that. And it can be like, what's wrong with this player? What's wrong with this scenario? And so that has really helped me flip things back to myself. And so if a player's not growing, hey, it's not because the player is not working hard or the player's not bought in. It might be that my method of teaching is not connecting with that specific player. My method of communication is not connecting with that specific player. So I think just trying to read and grow, and that's been big for me. But then I've also been intentional about connecting with, I have a coaching consultant, and he has full autonomy to be honest and brutally honest. And so he will sit in on once a month staff meetings and then give feedback on how I'm coaching our coaches, how I'm mentoring our assistant coaches, and he's involved in discussions about recruiting, discussions about community building, discussions about scheduling. And so that's another area where I've just tried to surround myself with people that are honest. I think as a head coach, you have your own little kingdom at whatever school you're at in your arena as the head coach, where you're in charge of the athletes, you're in charge of the assistant coaches, you're leading the support staff. And I really don't want to be in that chair without people that are keeping me accountable to growth and to areas where I need to keep improving. And so I've tried to position people in those areas and then be consistent about interacting with them. And so there's a former coach at University of Florida who's in that role, and I trust him. He knows my heart, my vision. He knows what my goals are beyond just winning matches, and that's been really helpful to have that feedback.
So good, man. It's the Suzuki method, man. I'm going to check that out for sure. I know you and I have talked about that before, but just thank you for breaking it down. And before we get to the final question, just reminded me of a quick story about how you're owning the fact that maybe the student athlete's not developing at the rate that they were because of you're not connecting with them appropriately. They're not communicating, or you're not communicating with them appropriately. Reminds me of the story, and this is back in the early 1900s, the London Times. They put out this question to a bunch of philosophers and authors and whatever it might be. And the question was, what's wrong with the world today? Right? It's funny. Well, we could probably ask that question anytime in history, right? But so London Times puts out this question, what's wrong with the world today? And as you can imagine, all these people that are great thinkers, they send in and they have their long paragraphs and their, great thoughtful responses. And G.K. Chesterton at the time, author and philosopher, sends in a 2-word response. And his 2-word response to the question of what's wrong with the world today was, I am. And I think it's a really important thing for all of us in leadership positions, as parents, spouses, wherever it may be. It's if things aren't going well, let's start with you first. Let's start with I am the problem. Because I think when you start there, that's when you can really start to uncover some things and then really make the adjustments that you need to going forward. So with that, man, let's get to this final question that we ask every guest here on the No Show Dogs podcast, right? Because No Show Dogs is about, hey, it's not about looking good, it's about being good. Really that simple, right? Like, don't care what it looks like, don't care what it sounds like. What we care is about the outcome and how we get there. And so with that being said, reflecting on your career, and you've alluded to some things, but I can't wait to see where you go with this last one. But reflecting on your career, what were some of the things that you've been willing to do that you don't think maybe others have, that has helped you have the success you've had up to this point?
As a coach, you're bringing in your life experience and your approach. My childhood, we didn't grow up with a lot. And my dad in middle school, he started his own company. And I think that entrepreneurial, like, okay, our family's in this position. I don't want to accept that. I'm going to go and do this. I was in middle school screwing desks together in an office, helping him start that. And that through his hard work and through his vision, that has become successful, a real estate business that he started. And I think that experience has caused me to approach every head coaching role in a very entrepreneurial way. And to come into a place like Pepperdine and go, okay, like, we don't have the same resources as these other Power 4 programs, and the infrastructure and the support is different. Well, actually, that gives us freedom to not have to participate in the same experience that every other student athlete has. We can craft a unique experience that's just for tennis. And hey, if we fundraise, and last year we fundraised $500,000 in tennis at Pepperdine, we're going to have the ultimate freedom to do what we want. And so, yeah, I think that has been, I mentioned earlier that obsession is pretty hard to beat. And I do feel like I'm obsessed with the developmental process, with supporting these young people. I love what I do, but I think that a separator has also just been the spirit of, you know what, this might be where we're supposed to finish up. This might be where our resources are supposed to lead us. But like, why shouldn't North Florida be top 50 in D1? You know, why shouldn't Pepperdine go and compete for a national championship? And I think I love that. I've had some opportunities at other schools that have those resources to take other head coaching jobs. And I actually love the sense of having a chip on your shoulder and having a little bit less and seeing what we can make of it. Yeah, Pepperdine, I'm not apologizing for the fact that we're in Malibu. It's a pretty amazing place with a pretty amazing campus. So I'm not trying to say it's, you know, but there is a sense of creating something and having the freedom to do it that I really enjoy and really lean into, and it fits with my personality.
It's great. Shaq, man, this has been awesome, man. We really appreciate you spending some time with us. I know you mentioned earlier you got a wedding to attend here shortly of your assistant coach. So really just appreciate you carving out some time this morning with us and just sharing what you've learned along the way, man, and sharing your journey and the great things that you're doing at Pepperdine. And we're excited to see what happens this season, man. It's going to be an exciting year. And so just excited to see how that rolls out, man.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate what you guys are doing. And it's so awesome to see, you know, some of the, how the business world and the high performing sports world interacts. And I think you guys do such a great job of connecting those two. And so I love learning from you guys as well.
Thanks, Shaq. Appreciate that, man. All right, brother. Go out and make it a great today.